On the morning of August 5th, 1962, a heavy silence fell over a small bungalow in Brentwood, California. The world woke up to news that seemed impossible. The girl with the golden hair, the woman whose laugh could stop a heart at 1,000 paces, was gone. At just 36 years old, Marilyn Monroe was frozen in time, forever young, forever beautiful, and forever a mystery. To the public, she was the ultimate symbol of Hollywood's golden age. But to the woman born Norma Jeane Mortensen, Marilyn was a character she had carefully crafted to protect the vulnerable girl hiding inside. Today, in 2026, as we mark the centennial of her birth, the legend has only grown. We remember the golden goddess, but we often forget the woman of iron will who survived a childhood of shadows to become the most famous face on earth. This is the story of the woman Hollywood tried to own, but never truly understood. The story of Marilyn Monroe didn't begin under studio lights. It began in the charity ward of Los Angeles General Hospital in 1926. Born Norma Jeane Mortensen, she was a girl without a father and a mother, Gladys, who struggled with deep mental instability. By the time she was 7, Norma Jeane was a ward of the state. She would spend the next decade bouncing between 10 different foster homes and a 2-year stint at the Los Angeles Orphans Home. She was a hand-me-down child, carrying her few belongings in a small bag from one stranger's house to the next. This lack of a foundation created a hunger for love that would define her entire life. At just 16, she married a neighbor, Jim Dougherty, not for love, but for a place to belong. She was a teenage housewife, a factory worker, and a girl who thought her story would end in a quiet suburb. In 1944, fate arrived in the form of a camera lens at the Radio Plane Munitions Factory. Norma Jeane was inspecting parachutes and spraying drones with fire retardant for $20 a week. A military photographer named David Conover, sent by a unit commanded by a young Ronald Reagan, walked into the plant to document women aiding the war effort. When he saw Norma Jeane, he didn't just see a worker, he saw a luminosity that bypassed the film and hit the heart. Conover encouraged her to try modeling, and within months, she had quit the factory and dyed her hair platinum blonde. She was no longer the brunette Norma Jeane from the assembly line. She signed her first contract with 20th Century Fox in 1946, choosing the name Marilyn after star Marilyn Miller and using her mother's maiden name, Monroe. The factory girl was dead, and an icon was being born. By 1953, Marilyn was the biggest box office draw in the world, but her paycheck didn't reflect it. While filming Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Marilyn was still under her old 1950 contract, earning a relatively modest $500 a week, a total of about $18,000 for the entire film. Her co-star Jane Russell, who was already an established name, was reportedly paid over $150,000 for the same movie. Marilyn didn't resent Russell. In fact, the two became close friends. But the discrepancy opened Marilyn's eyes to the harsh reality of the studio system. She was generating millions for the big men at Fox, yet she couldn't even afford her own dressing room. It was here that the dumb blonde began to fade, replaced by a woman who realized that in Hollywood, you don't get what you're worth. You only get what you have the courage to negotiate. In 1954, Marilyn did the unthinkable. She walked away. Tired of being cast in repetitive blonde roles and frustrated by her lack of creative control, she refused to show up for the musical Pink Tights. The studio suspended her, but Marilyn didn't blink. Instead, she packed her bags and fled to New York City. In a move that shocked the industry, she teamed up with photographer Milton Green to form her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions. She was only the second woman in Hollywood history to do so, following in the footsteps of Mary Pickford. While the press laughed and called her Bernhardt in a bikini, Marilyn was quietly reinventing herself. She traded the bright lights of Hollywood for the dusty floors of the actor's studio, where she began studying the method under Lee Strasberg. She wasn't just hiding, she was evolving. For a year, the Battle of the Blonde raged on. Fox executives assumed she would run out of money and come crawling back, but they underestimated her resolve. While living in New York, Marilyn found a sense of peace she had never known in California. She spent her days in museums, reading classic literature, and practiced her craft alongside legends like Paul Newman and Marlon Brando. Eventually, the studio blinked. The success of the 7-year itch proved they couldn't survive without her. In 1955, Marilyn signed a landmark new contract that granted her something almost no other star had. the right to approve her own directors and cinematographers, a massive salary hike, and the freedom to make films for other studios. It was a total victory. The factory girl had successfully brought the most powerful studio in the world to its knees. In 1954, Marilyn entered into what the press called the marriage of the century with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. On the surface, it was a match made in American heaven, the king of the diamond and the queen of the screen. But beneath the flashbulbs, their lives were a study in contradiction. Joe was a traditionalist who wanted a quiet wife to stay at home in San Francisco. Marilyn was a woman whose career was exploding into a global phenomenon. The breaking point came on a cold night in New York during the filming of the iconic subway grate scene for The 7-Year Itch. As thousands of onlookers cheered while Marilyn's white dress caught the breeze, Joe stood in the shadows, fuming with jealousy. The marriage lasted only 9 months, but the bond between them was strange and enduring. Marilyn's next chapter was perhaps her most surprising. In 1956, she married the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Arthur Miller. To the public, it was The Egghead and The Hourglass. But for Marilyn, it was a desperate attempt to find the intellectual respect she had been denied her entire life. She moved to a quiet farmhouse in Connecticut, traded her evening gowns for simple shirts, and tried her hand at being a serious wife and student of literature. She converted to Judaism for Miller, a deeply personal decision that showed her commitment to this new life. During this time, she delivered perhaps her greatest performance in The Misfits, a film written by Miller specifically for her. However, the film was a grueling experience, and the marriage began to crumble under the weight of Marilyn's mounting health struggles and Miller's own creative frustrations. She was searching for a father figure and a teacher, but she found herself playing another role that didn't quite fit. As the 1960s began, the Marilyn image was becoming a cage. Behind the scenes, she was battling chronic insomnia and a grueling schedule of prescription medications that the studio doctors often encouraged to keep her working. She suffered through multiple surgeries for endometriosis, a painful condition that contributed to her heartbreaking inability to carry a child to term. This physical pain, combined with the emotional trauma of her childhood, led to frequent stays in hospitals and clinics. Yet, even in her most fragile moments, her professional power remained undeniable. In 1962, she traveled to Mexico and returned with a newfound sense of independence, planning to take control of her career once again. She was a woman in pain, yes, but she was also a woman making plans for a future that she believed was finally hers to design. In May 1962, Marilyn stepped onto the stage of Madison Square Garden for what would become her final public appearance. She was there to sing for President John F. Kennedy's 45th birthday. Despite running a fever of over 100 degrees from a severe sinus infection, Marilyn was radiant. She was sewn into a sheer, flesh-colored gown encrusted with over 2,000 rhinestones, a dress so tight she reportedly couldn't wear anything underneath it. Contrary to the myth that she was simply late or disoriented, recent archives confirm that Marilyn had meticulously rehearsed every breath and every note of her performance. When she began her sultry rendition of Happy Birthday, it wasn't an accident. It was a carefully planned moment of theater. It would ignite rumors of a secret romance that still swirl today in 2026, marking the last time the world would see her in all her glittering, complicated glory. The mystery of Marilyn's final night on August 4th, 1962, has fueled endless speculation, but 2026 archival records offer a more grounded human perspective. Marilyn was at her home on 5th Helena Drive in Brentwood, the first house she had ever truly owned. Verified records from that day show her signing a check for a new chest of drawers, an act that points to a woman looking toward a long future in her new sanctuary. However, by the early hours of August 5th, her household staff discovered her unresponsive. While the official inquest at the time ruled the cause as an overdose, modern historians often point to the tragic complexity of her life, a combination of chronic health struggles and the heavy weight of fame. She passed away in the quiet of her own home, leaving behind a legacy that was only just beginning to be understood. It was a somber end to a life that had burned so bright, yet her story didn't stop that night. It simply moved from the screen into the hearts of history. Today, in 2026, as we mark what would have been Marilyn Monroe's 100th birthday, she remains the most recognizable face on the planet. Her face has outlived the studio system that tried to control her and the men who tried to define her. We see her today not just as a blonde bombshell, but as a pioneer, the factory girl who became her own boss, the student who sought out the hardest texts, and the woman who had the courage to show her vulnerability to the world. She once said, "I don't want to be a big star. I just want to be wonderful." A century after her birth, we realized she was far more than wonderful. She was a master of her own image, a survivor of her own history, and an eternal light in the history of film. Marilyn Monroe didn't just live a life, she became a part of ours.